Have you ever been driving your vehicle and you notice that the more you drive it, the more the steering wheel starts shaking left and right, almost like things are out of balance? That's what we're experiencing here. And on top of that, every time I hit the brake pedal, the car wants to pull to the left a little bit, and you could see it in the steering wheel, really. It starts turning by itself, but then when I let go, it goes back to the right. And regardless of what I do, it's just always shaking. So, of course, something is wrong. I pulled it in here so we can inspect things, and I did a quick walk around. Now, the first thing I noticed is as I walked past this wheel, I could feel heat radiating from it like an actual radiator. That's not normal. I didn't use the brakes all that much. I went over to the other side front wheel, and yeah, sure, the rotor was hot, but it was normal hot. So clearly that tells me something is wrong on this corner of the vehicle and we need to dig in a little bit further. So I raised the vehicle up in the air. I like to give the wheels a little spin when I have issues like this, just so I can get some more information without actually starting to disassemble anything. So I spun the rear wheels, no problem there. I spun the driver's side front, no problem there, no play, everything feels nice and free. This side, however, once I got to this one, yep. That's pretty stuck. So the brakes are locked up here, and just so you can get a better representation of how much force it takes to spin this wheel, here's a torque wrench that I put on the lug nut with a live reading on the screen. And you can see that it takes upwards of 40 foot-pounds to spin this wheel with it up in the air. Obviously, brakes are not being applied. That is an excessive amount of force. Compare this to the driver's side wheel, which has no apparent issues. It takes about 4 foot-pounds. So that is 10 times, or actually a little bit more than 10 times the force to spin this one than it takes to spin the other one. Now with the wheel off, we can see all of our brake components, especially our caliper here. That is definitely bad. And speaking of, if you need calipers, pads and rotors, or any other car parts, check us out at oneauto.com so you can get your car fixed up. Now back to our caliper situation. This one is seized. And what that means is the piston of the caliper that presses on the brake pads, well, it moved out and has squished the brake pads in our case, but it can't retract. So it's seized, applying constant pressure to the pads. You could have your foot off the brakes, doesn't matter. It's gonna act as if you were pressing on the brakes. So that's one symptom that it can have when it's seized. And another one that I've seen is they actually can't compress at all. Like they're just seized where they are. At that point, you would basically lose brakes on this corner of the vehicle, and it would still be considered seized, but it would have a slightly different feeling when you're driving. But how do you know that just this caliper is affected? Looking closer on the other side, which is the side that did not have any apparent issues at first, so it spun freely, couldn't see anything wrong from the outside, but if you look from the inside, and you don't have to have the wheel off for this, you could just peek underneath with a flashlight, you can see this caliper is wet. And that can only mean one thing, because this isn't water, that is brake fluid. Now, brake fluid leaking from here is definitely a sign that this caliper has gone bad and needs to be replaced as soon as possible. At this point, this vehicle needs 2 calipers, not just one. They've both failed, but in different ways. I want to briefly come back to the side with the seized caliper because I want to point out all these dark spots on the rotor. If you look close, you can see these are actually hot spots on the rotor. Because this caliper has squished the pad so much, it has overheated the pad severely, and it has overheated the rotor severely. These rotors and the pads are now cooked. They cooked. They're done. It needs new brakes on the front, which is too bad because these brakes aren't that old, but it has destroyed them. So I went to oneauto.com and got myself a kit that comes with both front calipers, pads and rotors, everything I need to get this done in one go. So let's get parts installed and get this vehicle safely back on the road. And with all that, the car is safely back on the road.